welcome to a new episode of the brand called You. Today, I have a very, very young and accomplished lady who has achieved a lot in her corporate career. Sonu Bhasin, welcome to the show.
Thank you. And Ashutosh, young is relative. So there are many people who may not consider me young, but I'm delighted that
Well,
you consider me young.
You're younger than me.
Yes.
So, Sonu is an MBA. She's worked with the Tata Administrative Service. She was with ING Bearings. Then she was president of Axis Bank, Yes Bank, and then she went back to the Tatas as the chief operating officer. She sits on several boards, and she's an author of books like The Inheritors and Unstoppable. So, Sonu, tell us a little bit about your early career and some of your learnings.
So my early career started way back in 87 when I graduated from FMS in Delhi and joined the Tatas. And at that time, not so much now, but at that time, TAS, Tata Administrative Service, used to be a really elite cadre.
Absolutely.
It was one of the most coveted jobs, even though I may say it myself. And I consider myself extremely fortunate.
Okay.
Yeah,
It was the IAS of the private sector.
Yeah, and my dad always wanted me to join the IAS. I didn't want to study that much. So when I did get into the TAS, I told him, I said, I haven't got into the IAS, but here is
Correct.
TAS.
Correct.
So I was extremely fortunate to be part of it. And fortunate also because it gave me the right grounding. Because Tata's, as everybody knows, is, they believe that the business has to be done the right way. And as in any family, it's your bringing up, it's your, childhood really that determines the kind of values and ethics and the person that you become as an adult. Similarly, in the corporate life, it is extremely important to learn the right lessons early on in your career life.
Okay.
And therefore, my one takeaway that has stayed with me throughout has been that there is only one way to do business, which is the right way.
Wonderful. So, you spent how many years with TAS?
With TAS was 13 years.
13 years.
Yeah.
And TAS, if I recall correctly, used to give a very, very large and overview of a lot of the Tata companies.
Yeah,
From there, you switched to banking.
I did.
How was this change and how did you make that transition?
So, I actually never did think that I would work in a bank because I always thought that banking was a very boring job. But then I just kind of wandered into banking and I never did plan anything in my career. I took the opportunities that came my way, and there was an opportunity that came my way where I became a private banker. And in the year 2000, there weren't too many private bankers around.
Correct.
And as it happened that the bank that I was working with merged into a larger commercial bank. So ING Bearings merged with ING Vesya, and I got an opportunity to see what was the larger commercial banking was about. But I always remained part of consumer banking, and therefore I did not ever find it boring. Banking, I learned the fact that money, which is coveted by most people, is also a cause for a lot of unhappiness. So as a private banker, I've seen some very, very, very wealthy, rich people, but they haven't been the most happy people that I've known. So it just gave me an insight into the place that money has in people's lives. And personally, it gave me an insight into the role that money has in my life. So not really from a work point of view, the learning, but I think more from a larger
And then you moved to Axis and Yes.
I did move to Axis. I set up the entire distribution network for Axis Bank. It used to be UTI Bank at that time.
Yeah.
Later we changed the name to
Correct.
Axis,
Yeah.
and then I moved to Yes Bank. And after that, as part of my, close the circle, went back to the Tatas for a couple of years
Correct.
before I decided to quit.
So, in those days, for a woman
Yeah.
to break the glass ceiling,
Yeah.
you were one of the few people who made it right to the top. What was it like then? And then I have a follow-up question on that.
So Ashutosh, I've never seen myself as a woman. I mean, as a
I understand. Yeah.
woman.
Mm.
I guess because in my time there were so few of us women that were there as
Correct.
part of the corporate world,
Yeah.
that I became absolutely used to being the only woman in a large room filled with black suits. For me, it was the norm.
Correct.
And um, I guess the way I carried myself, the way that I worked, people also didn't see me as a woman.
Mm.
But having said that, I do tell people that looking back, I am extremely proud of myself
Correct.
that I did whatever I did,
Mm.
and I did it in spite of being a woman. Today, actually, it's much easier to be a woman.
Correct.
And I tell all these young friends of my son who are aspiring professionals that this is the best time to be a woman professional. I mean, there are just so many um, not advantages, but people are just so much more
Receptive.
caring,
Yeah.
or they are aware of
Mm.
issues that they need to be aware of
Correct.
when they have women employees. I mean, for a long time, I didn't even have some of my offices didn't even have a proper ladies' toilet,
Mm.
which used to be horrible.
Mm.
And today, that is not the case.
That's not the case.
So it's not those larger things that people
True.
talk about.
True.
It's these smaller things that make a lot of difference in the life of a woman in the workplace.
So, in the last few years, there's a lot of talk about the gender balance.
Yeah.
And you're saying it is beginning to change. I was speaking to some other people a few weeks ago. Is this really changing, or is this a lot of lip service?
The fact that there are more women in the
That the fact
workplace.
that everyone's saying we need more women on boards, we need more women in the workplace, we need a better environment for them to work, because they are half the population.
Yeah, so you're
And my own experience has been that women are far more ethical in their work than men.
Yeah.
And yet it's taking so long to transition. So, what are your thoughts on this?
So you're right when you say that there's a lot of talk. So there is a lot of talk, but it's not backed by a lot of action,
Correct.
right? So I'll talk from my perspective. That today, even 10 years ago, men were very happy to have women as part of their teams. Extremely happy, because like you said, women are hardworking, they're ethical, the majority of them. Outliers are always there.
Yeah.
But the moment you become a colleague or a boss,
Mm.
the whole dynamics changes, right? So, and that is one of the reasons why you see a lot of women at junior management, some women at middle management, but very few women at senior management. Because when the knives are out, they're vicious.
Okay.
They're really vicious.
Mm.
So it's very nice for a man to say, I have very capable women as
Mm.
part of my team.
Mm.
But how many men have you heard talking
About a woman
in
boss.
complimentary terms about their women colleagues?
Wow. Okay. Amazing. So let's move on to the work that you're doing with families and businesses. You also have a magazine,
I do.
which you give me a copy of just
Yes.
now. Talk to me about this initiative.
So, family businesses or family business owners actually started coming as part of my radar screen way back in 2000 when I became a private banker.
Correct.
As a private banker, we were dealing with private wealth. And because we were talking of their personal money, and we were dealing with people who in the year 2000, people who had the kind of money that private bankers wanted,
Mhm.
were businessmen, because corporate salaries were not as high as they're today. ESOPs as a source of wealth creation
Was not
hadn't
there.
kicked in. So the only people who had money were businessmen.
Mhm.
And we weren't chasing the large businessmen, the
Yeah.
Tatas, the Birlas. We were chasing the SMEs, really.
Mhm.
And all of them are family owned. So I got an insight as to the role that family dynamics had to play
Mm.
in the investment decisions.
Okay.
So if a patriarch, if a father got along better with one son
Mm.
than the other one, the number of joint investments that he had with his favorite son were much more than the other one.
I
So,
see.
small
Mm.
things like these, but it also affected the way that the businesses were run. And again, as through my life as a banker, commercial
Mm.
banker, SMEs were always a target focus.
Right.
Also got an opportunity to work with the Rothschilds, because when I was with Axis, Rothschild wanted to do a JV with us,
Mm.
and I got an insight into the European family businesses. And it made me realize two things: that family businesses have a unique problem, if I can put it that way. The longevity of their business actually doesn't depend on their business,
Mm.
their business model. It actually depends on their family model, the family dynamics. And it's you cannot find a successful, robust family business if it has a disharmonious family.
Mm.
But as bankers, as lawyers, as advisors, as consultants, nobody talks to business owners about family dynamics. Everybody talks to them about businesses.
Mm.
And I think the germ of an idea became, it actually was inside me when I was a banker, that this is an area that needs some work. Because for the big guys, you have the
Mhm.
McKinseys of the world, you have, the Papariks of the world who can go and advise the large families. But the SMEs that are the drivers of any economy,
Yeah.
they are the ones that have the hunger. They are the ones that need this advice. Nobody talks to them,
Nobody.
because they don't have the oomph
Mhm.
that the large businesses have.
Correct.
So when I did decide to do something on my own, I set up a firm which very innovatively is called Families and Business,
Mhm.
FAB. And my objective is just to get conversations started,
Mm.
so that people are aware of issues that they need to address
Mm.
if they want to build multi-generational businesses. And the fact that they are aware is about 60% of the problem solved, because they're aware then that this is not an emotional problem that exists only in their family, and that there's something wrong with them and their family,
Yeah.
but that it's an endemic problem.
Mm.
I mean, the statistics are quite
So,
revealing.
there is an old Chinese saying, which is that the first generation builds, the second generation consolidates, and the third generation destroys. Is that something that you have seen in India as well?
Yeah, shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations. And the statistics from around the world, and India follows that trend, is that 90% of world commerce
Mhm.
is in the hands of family owned businesses. A large part of them are also family run.
Yeah.
But 70% of all family businesses last only one generation. And can you imagine what a big
Just
waste?
one generation.
Just one generation. Only 3% make it to the fourth generation or beyond.
Mm.
And again, the reasons have nothing to do with the business. It has everything to do with the
Family
family.
dynamics.
And the size of the family has no bearing on this, because if you see, Dhirubhai Ambani died.
Mm.
His two sons fought. The business split.
Mm.
But if you're familiar, in Delhi, you have a nice chaat shop called Nathu Sweets, Bengali sweets in Bengali market.
Mm.
Now there also the patriarch died,
Mm.
and the sons fought, and the business got split. So what happens at a mega level also happens at the small family
Correct.
business level. So because these problems are about humans, it really doesn't matter which part of the world you're in. It doesn't matter what is the size of your business. These are problems. And somebody needs to get the patriarchs, who are the most smart people that I've known, because they all run successful businesses. Somebody needs to talk to them to say, while you're focusing on your business model, you also need to focus on your family model.
Very, very well said. So, Sonu, family businesses in India, and I know several of them, are under a lot of stress. And you did mention that it's nothing to do with the business, but I don't see the traditional family businesses innovating at all.
Mhm.
Um, why are they not doing this?
Innovative in
I mean, they're still sticking to their old traditional industries, which they managed to get because of the license Raj and proximity to politicians, etc.
yeah,
But most of them are being left behind. They're all sitting on old wealth.
yeah. So you're talking of the family business patriarchs who, because of the way India was, were used to doing business in a certain manner.
Correct.
It was who you knew
Hmm.
rather than what you did
Yeah.
that actually made you successful or not. Early 90s, mid 90s onwards, the model started changing. People who understood this and changed adapted themselves, and it wasn't easy.
Yeah.
Because now you actually had to compete in the real world,
Correct.
did grow.
Hmm.
But people who were unable to change themselves fell by the wayside. But the good thing is that the inheritors who are coming into the business, who have a world education, whose worldview is more broad, who see how really businesses happen around the world, some of those inheritors who are being allowed by the patriarchs to come in and take decisions are being are seeing success. But where the patriarch tells the inheritor who may have come back from an Ivy League business school, who may be in their mid 30s, to say, बेटा तुम चुप रहो, जो तुम बाहर से पढ़ के आए हो ना, वो तुम अपने पास रखो, मेरे को पता है क्योंकि मैंने बिजनेस बनाया है. How are they going to change?
True. So one more question on family business before I move on. You know, this is the age of millennials. How are millennials changing family businesses?
Oh, I'm so happy that you asked me, because we did a white paper titled The Millennial Inheritors of Family Businesses. And we interviewed about 100 millennial inheritors. And my takeaway is that the world is in a safe hands.
Oh, wonderful.
The millennials, I have walked out of each conversation, which has lasted at least a couple of hours, totally impressed. And I think the fact that the younger generation doesn't know anything, the younger generation has no respect, is a myth that is propagated by people of our generation. But the millennials are extremely sorted out. They know what they want. Relationships play a very important role in their lives. Their fathers may not believe it, but the millennial inheritors we spoke with, all 99% of them considered their father as their main source of inspiration and also their hero. So the millennials are the ones who are bringing in professionalism into their family businesses. They're bringing in external talent. They are seeing external talent as an investment rather than as a cost. They are not emotionally wedded to the business. If they see an opportunity to get an external investor, which means that they lose a bit of control, they are not averse to it. Their fathers are averse to it. So they are bringing in their new thinking, their new, I would say, a whiff of fresh air, whiff of fresh professional air into the businesses.
Wonderful. So let's move on to your next avatar as an author. You've written 2 books. Tell me about these 2 books.
So these books again are in the area of family businesses. So now I'm focused. So I see my career in 3 phases. So my first phase was TS, the second phase was banking, and my third phase is focused only on family businesses. So when Penguin asked me to write the first book, which is The Inheritors, I was very clear I didn't want to write an academic book. I wanted to tell stories of successful family business owners. And therefore, in my 2 books, you will not find too many financial figures, because these are matters of public disclosure, and they're all there.
Sure.
But it is the stories behind the scene stories about what makes these entrepreneurs successful. The second one is a biography of the owner of Berger Paints. You know, when you talk to an average person about businessmen, their first thought is, you know, they have it all. They have the money, they lead grand lifestyles, they drive big cars, you know, whatever. They don't see the hard work that has gone into them being successful.
Correct.
And through my stories, I do want to focus on the hard work, the determination, the grit that all of these have been through to get to where they have been. And
Okay.
each one of them has faced challenges. I mean, in my first book, The Inheritors, one of the stories was about Amit Burman, who's now the chairman of Dabur. There was one of Tara Analjeet Singh, Tara Vachani. Now, when I just randomly take the name of these two people, the people who are hearing these names say, "अरे उनकी life में क्या problem है? उनको तो सब मिला है, पका पकाया. उन्होंने क्या करा है?" But both of them, and in fact, each one of them has faced tremendous challenges. They've stared at failure
Absolutely.
at their face.
Yeah.
The only thing is that they've gotten up. They've dusted themselves, and they have made a success of
Right.
whatever they are doing. So failure is something that each successful business owner has seen, but has not been phased by it.
In fact, Tara was on our show. So
Really? Oh,
about
good.
2 months ago. She and her husband were both on the show.
Right.
So one more question on books before I come to a few questions for you personally. What goes into writing a good book, and what is the discipline you have when you write?
What goes into writing a good book? That's a difficult one. Okay, so I would say that the books that I write, I think are good, and therefore I will talk about them.
Sure.
I like to tell stories because I believe that the strongest learning are told through stories. And when you read a book, when I read a book, and we may read the same book, the takeaway that you will have may be different from the one that I have. And if I read a book at 3 different times in the course of my life, the takeaway that I will take away each time will be different. So the stories that are told in a non-moralistic manner, I think, make a good book.
Okay.
And the discipline is very difficult to maintain.
Okay.
When I'm in the flow, then I write for about 5-6 hours. My day begins rather late, and I'm not a person that writes late into night or early in the morning. My most productive times are the afternoons till time before dinner.
Okay, wonderful. So just a few more questions for you personally. Are there any people you have had in your life who have mentored you? And if yes?
I haven't had a mentor.
Okay.
I haven't had a mentor,
Okay.
but there have been different people in my life at different points of time. And it's almost as if God or whoever is up there knows that Sonu at this time needs this kind of an advice. And a person just walks into my life at that time.
Okay.
And I benefit from the advice or the mentorship for a small period of time, and then that person just waltzes away. I mean, we keep in touch, but I'm just blessed to have had many mentors.
Wonderful. So then my next question is, what 3 adjectives would describe you?
Oops, depends on who you're asking. I mean, they could vary. They could be complete antonyms of each other. But I would say most people would find me open, friendly, and trustworthy.
Okay. Wonderful. So I always ask all my guests a question on failure, and you just spoke a little bit about failure, because in our country, for that matter, most of South Asia or Asia, we don't teach children that failure is acceptable. Everyone says, come first,
क्लास में फर्स्ट आना है,
है, क्यू में सबसे आगे जाना है, etc. And yet we have all failed. What have been some of your learnings from some of your mistakes or failures?
Well, the biggest learning is that it's not permanent. And it's up to me to look at failure and say, Zindagi khatam ho gayi. Or to say, I failed. So what? There is something that I've learned, and let me not make the same mistake again. And the one thing that I've learned is that you sleep over it, and the next day is always bright and sunny.
Wonderful. So, Sonu, my last question to you, and this is again, we've got thousands and thousands of people who watch our show. A lot of young people who look up to you, starting their careers in the corporate world. What would your advice be to a young 21, 22-year-old, 23-year-old MBA, all starry-eyed, starting out in the corporate world?
So maybe one advice, but in 3 parts. The real world is different from the academic world, and therefore be prepared to unlearn a lot of what you have learned, and become a student all over again when you start work. 2, it's very difficult to plan your career. For a young 21-year-old to say, by the time I'm 42, this is what I will do and this is where I will be. It's extremely difficult. But the one thing that they can do is to give whatever they're doing their best shot. Because I believe, and I speak from personal experience, that if you give whatever you're doing your best shot, opportunities come your way. There are some that you recognize, there are some that you don't. But whatever you choose to do, whether you like it or not, I mean, all of us, we've been professionals. There are jobs that we haven't liked. But it's important to give it your best shot. Give it your best that you can do. And opportunities will come your way.
Sonu, thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you for being on our show.
Thank you, Ashutosh. I've enjoyed myself, and I hope that the people who are watching would also have enjoyed themselves. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You podcast. Be sure to visit tbcy.in to join the conversation, access show notes, and discover fantastic bonus content. You can follow us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Simply search for The Brand Called You. Thank you, and see you next week.